Yeah, we're holding on in the Mechaber 28. Mechaber Simin Ches Halacha Yud Beis in the middle of Yud Beis. He had said that if one puts on multiple talesim simultaneously, one bracha covers all the talesim. The mafsik beineim, if one interrupts from one talis to the other, tzarich levarech al kalachas vechos. You have to say a separate bracha in each one. Wadin min lohei bedatu mitchila kulam. Havi k'mafsik beineim. Let's say initially only had in mind to put on one talis, and then after he put on the one and he said the bracha, he chose to put on another one. It's considered like a hefsed because if he interrupted, and it requires its own bracha. Right, this is where we left off this Rama. What happened initially, he had in mind to put on two talesim, puts on the first one, and before he puts on the second, what you originally had in mind, he took off the first, before he put on the second. He says, then the halacha is tzorich las levorich. You have to say bracha on the second. He had in mind to put on two. So if he would have put them on consecutively, and he put the second on when he was still wearing the first, the bracha on the first would have covered the second. But since when he put on the second, he first removed the first, so there's no remnant of the first mitzvah, the bracha of the first will not cover the second. We'll have to understand the rationale. Why? For some reason, you have to understand why. Because I'll tell you, I understand, but he wore one. But he was yotze, but he was yotze the mitzvah already. That's the difficulty. It's like a person that has in mind to eat two pieces of bread. Eats one, swallows and eats the second. Right? So the motzi said on the first covers the second eating. Right?
Continue.
Let's say he had in mind, I'm going to eat exactly one kazayis bread, no more. Says a motzi. And then he has a change when he eats a second, he has to have another motzi. Right? But if he had in mind to eat two, or as much as he chooses to eat, so the bracha covers what, even though when he eats the second, the first doesn't exist any longer. I mean, here, when he put on the first, was a yotze the mitzvah of tzitzis? He was yotze. He chose to take it off. So why is the taking it off? Why doesn't it negate the intent? If actually it did come to fruition, what initially what he had in mind to do, he did do. He wore the first beged. What difference does it make? What difference does it make? We'll see the Mishna Berura, the rationale.
What would be the reason if you can consider another pair?
Let's say a talus cotton. He had in mind to put on talus cotton and talus gadol. Before he put on talus gadol, he took off talus cotton. So the bracha he said on talus cotton will not cover the talus gadol. Mafsik beineim. No, we stood on kulam chayovim. Puts on multiple begodim, right? Now first he says, if you have multiple four-cornered garments, everyone you have put tzitzis on. But when do you have put tzitzis on them? We hold chovas gavra, not chovas mono. Right? Let's say you have four-cornered garments in your drawer. You're not wearing them. There's no obligation to put tzitzis. The obligation only if you choose to wear. No, it's an argument in the Gemara. We will halochet chovas gavra. The obligation is on the person. It's only when you're wearing it. Kulam chayovim ratzalom im lovshem kulam avon munochim b'tevoso. Let's say it's in the chest. Peturin, the kaimodom we rule. Tzitzis chovas gavra v'lo chovas mono. It's an obligation on the person, not on the garment. Kidul kamam sim yutes. Mafsik beineim. If he interrupts from one to the other, now what's a hefsek? Hainu behefsek godol shu b'chal hesek hadas. Normally we say, what's a hefsek? Usually it's tochidei dibur, right? Tochidei dibur, which is a very small time frame. Here it says hadas. Let's say you put on your talis and the cotton, and you have in mind you're going to put on the talis godol.
Is there a bracha on the cotton?
He said the bracha on talis cotton, right? He says then the halach is, as long as there's no hesek hadas, when you put on the second one, it will be covered with the first. Let's say 15 minutes pass, right? Till you take it out of the bag, till you unfold it, it's 5 minutes, right?
Say 3 hours.
No, that's hadas. It means it's a distraction. You distract which the distraction is long enough that you feel you're detached from the first action. That's a hadas.
So in the morning, in the summer, if you say a bracha on the talis katan, and you know, and you want it to cover the tal's gut.
You go to shul. Let's say you go to shul. Let's say you go to. Of course, it doesn't cover it. No question, it doesn't cover.
Does not cover.
Definitely not. Let's say you say bracha at home, and you drive to shul, right?
A bracha for.
On the tal's koden, and you drive to shul,
Right.
and you put on. First, if you speak to anybody before you put your talis on, there's not even a question. You have to say another bracha. He was speaking. The man didn't speak. He was speaking just time lapse.
Okay.
How much time does it has to lapse, which requires you to say another bracha? Okay. So we're saying the time has to be, which is considered hesed hadas, as well without speaking. Aval b'shia zman ma, but let's say it's a short amount of time in terms of waiting. Posum Rav Rom sha'achronu v'kam simin reish vov d'shtika lo chashiv hafsoko b'di'evid. Remaining silent, as long as you don't have hesed hadas, although it's melachatchila, it's best to put it on as quickly as possible. This person puts it on, and he wants to meditate for 15 minutes before he puts on his talis godel. Whatever it is. He's preoccupied in thought for whatever the thought may be, even though it's not lechatchila, but since he didn't speak, and he had in mind to put on the talis godel or another talis, he's not required to say another bracha. Not required. What about if he speaks? He said the bracha on one, then he speaks. This is again like a person says hamotzi, then he doesn't have a knife to cut the bread, doesn't have salt to dip the bread into salt. It's not a hefsek. Of course, that's necessary to eat the bread. So the same thing he says. When is speaking considered a hefsek? But he says if the speaking is l'tzorch levisha, what for instance, tenuli beged lubosh. He needs a garment to put on. Chaygav pshita dein tzorch lazu levorach. Avloi tzorch levisha. Let's say he spoke, wasn't necessary to say what he said. Ish deis bein haposkim das mechabev kam sifkiyud gimel of Rav Rom. Harbi min achronim, many of the later authorities. Shach ein shach yerodeo. Poskim afil sicho ba'alma gamkin abachol hefsek linyan zeh. It's considered hefsek. Avol yesh min achronim sheposkim dekem the yisobim b'zeh de ein tzorch lazu levorach. Havi kamo shesoch b'mtza sudo. Mutav shlo yachlis sovi brocho. So therefore it's best not to say the brocho. V'chein hiskem pri megodim. A person should be careful not to speak. If you put on one, you have a mind to put on another talis, you should not speak, otherwise you're getting involved in this question. Because it's so then you shouldn't have a large pause. Also, he said another reason. Let's say initially you had a mind to say the brach should cover one, and you delay, which is considered a significant amount of time. So you're required to say another bracha, but it's a bracha shein tzricha. Because if you could have prevented, it's not necessary. If you would have put it on sooner, if you have no choices, you have no choice. But if you could have, so why did you delay? He chose to delay. So as a result of that, his delay caused an unnecessary bracha, because that bracha could have been prevented. You know, it's interesting. You know, the different customs between Ashkenazim and Sfardim. Let's see, Shabbos. Before they go and eat all kinds of things before they start the meal. Olives and certain kinds of vegetables to make multiple brachas. That's the custom. That's the custom. I mean, for us, you'd say, it's a bracha shein tzricha. I mean, you're about to wash, and the motzi will cover everything. What's the point? But that's the minhag. Because since there's a problem of having 100 brachas on Shabbos, so they do this intentionally to accumulate more brachas. We do it differently. If something presents itself which you're not covered, okay, so you say a bracha. But we bring ourselves into a situation to make that number. But if you're about to wash, to eat things before the meal, like you have kids nibbling on the vegetable plate while they're waiting to wash, it's a bracha, unless the person's so hungry he can't wait. He wants to take the edge off his appetite. But if it's not a question of taking his edge off the appetite just to nibble, it's a bracha shein tzricha. Because if you wait just a moment, you say the motzi, there's no there's no reason to say the borpi adama when you eat the vegetable. Lo yebedato, rotzalomesh lo yebedato befeirush raksha kiberach stoma. Havi kemavsik. Medesosa mdemash mnara afilu hoyu munochem lefonav al kol habogodim shel abarakantus b'shas broch. He says interesting. He says, what's lo yebedato? You did not have specifically in mind you're going to put on multiple begodim. So then you have to say a bracha on each garment. He says, even if, let's say, what about if all the garments are piled up before you? Which seemingly would indicate that you have in mind that you can put them on, because they're right in front of you. He says, Afilu koyu munochim lefonov kol habegodim shel arba kanfos b'shas habrocha. Afilu hochi tzorch las levorech. Why? Says something here. Mayri shurogel raklu boshachas. Because since he normally only puts on one, so even though you have multiple, let's say he chooses one of the multiple, but he usually doesn't put on more than one. So if he doesn't put on more than one, so what did he have in mind when he said the bracha? One, not more than one. If he normally put on multiples, even if he doesn't have specifically in mind all, that's the mindset. That's his mindset, all. So one bracha then would cover. But since over here he normally only puts on one, so when he chooses to put on another one, it's considered a change of mind. Unless he has specifically in mind that he's going to put on as many as he chooses to put on. Person said al mitzvahs, he said al mitzvahs on his talus kodin, and then immediately he puts on his talus godel, the larger talus. He says, this is interesting. But the presumption is he has to say bracha. Why? The b'stomei daitu bal mitzvahs came al talus kodin. You know, we had before the Mechaber Paskins that what's the text of the bracha you say in Talus Koton? Ernie? Lisatif. The Mechaber. Mechaber doesn't French Talus Koton. So therefore, he's saying, the Ramah says we say Al Mitzvahs on Talus Koton. So even if he had in mind to put on Talus Godel, but since the bracha that you normally say Talus Godel is Lisatif, when he says Al Mitzvahs, it's almost the equivalent, unless he had specifically in mind that he wants Al Mitzvahs to cover the Talus Godel, the presumption is he did not have that in mind. Therefore, even though it's immediately afterwards, he has to say another bracha on Talus Godel. Lisatif.
Even if he said Lisatif.
No. He's speaking by an Ashkenazi. We say Al Mitzvahs. Okay. So since Al Mitzvahs normally it's not the text for Talus Godel, even though he had in mind to put the other one on immediately after he put on Talus Godel, he did not have in mind, the presumption is that the Al Mitzvah should cover the Talus Godel. So he says in that situation he has to have specifically in mind that he wants the Al Mitzvahs to cover the Talus Godel. He's not saying it's the right thing, because in fact it's a Baruch Shein Netzricha. It's a Baruch Shein Netzricha. He says if you have in mind to put on Talus Godel immediately after Talus Koton, person's davening at home, he gets dressed, puts on Talus Godel, cotton, and he's going to put on his Talus Godel. He says you should not have say a bracha on Talus Koton. Yeah? To mishum gram bracha shein tzrich. Again, you're saying an unnecessary bracha. There's no point. Im lovash talus below bedik. Stop. What?
I understand that, but if he says on Talus cut on it, let's say he says l'tate tzitzis, right, and then he has in mind to put Talus cut also. Why would that not? Why was that a bracha?
That bracha. It's an unnecessary bracha.
Right.
If with one bracha you cover two,
right,
it's unnecessary to say bracha for each one.
I'm saying, but why not say it on the
because firstly, because you put it on the ladder. You can't say, if you understand, you're saying when you're wearing all of them. It's not multiple. It's better to put them when you're wearing all. And not only also, it's more choshev levisha. It's the larger talus has greater value than putting on talus cotton. So you always, like, the halacha is if you have two pieces of bread, one is a whole bread, one is a cut piece, is a morsel. Which one do you say? No. You say no, it's because why that's called covered bracha. Out of respect for the bracha, whatever is more honorable, more respectful, that's what you choose. Talus Kodel is definitely a more respectful type of garment than Talus Cotton.
You said last week the reason you generally don't say Talus Cotton because one focus on size.
No. Everybody says a bracha. Normally you say bracha on Talus Cotton. Most people do. I just told you why I don't, or very few people don't. Most Talus Cotton. Because some say, you have to have a much larger size, but Mishna Berura says 18 by 18 is sufficient. That's sufficient to say the bracha on that. The only time it comes up with me to question, it would be in the summer or Erev Shabbos, where I wear the different Talus Cotton for Shabbos. So then it would be a question to say a bracha on the Talus Cotton. No, which I don't. But during the year, it's not a question, because I always, when I put it on, it's too early to say the bracha is dark. And then later, I have in mind, the Talis Gadol should cover the Talis Gadol, the bracha.
In the summertime, it's not too early.
Not to, so then,
2 hours.
so
3
that
hours.
would be like Erev Shabbos for me, putting on the new Talis Gadol.
That's a big question.
Right, that's the question. But most say it's not a question. As long as it meets the minimum size, you're permitted to say the bracha. And that's the way most people conduct themselves. He says, what about him lovish tals below bediko, motzos apostle? Person puts on a four-corner garment, checks that says it finds the strings are not proper. It's possible. He said the bracha originally was a kosher talis, and whatever, for some reason, they become invalidated. He caught a stitza on a chair, and the string tore off. Says no question. Firstly, he never had in mind to put on another talis. He originally thought that talis was going to be sufficient. Now the talis becomes posel. While he's wearing, it becomes posel. Or he says l'sateif, and he didn't check it. Then he checks the tzitzis immediately. He finds him to be posel. So what happened? The bracha was a bracha levatola. Turned out a bracha levatola. He thought it was kosher. It turned out not to be kosher.
He has to take it off right away, correct?
Sure, definitely takes it off. If he had in mind, say, when he said the bracha to put on multiple talesim, even if he finds the first one to be puzzled, it's not a problem, because he had in mind to put on multiple talesim. Okay? It's not it. See, it's interesting. It's not so simple. What's the halacha? We're going to have this later. And then a person that eats an apple, says Bar Priyates, and you want to eat other fruits throughout the day, and there will never be a question of a time lapse. You're permitted to rely on that original bracha to cover all the eating throughout the day. Okay?
What do you mean there's no time lapse?
I mean, if you wait 72 minutes, right? You continuously eat, you drink something.
Okay.
So the halacha is that original Bar Priyates will allow you to eat as much fruit as you want to eat. Even though he didn't think specifically, I will eat anything specific, the mindset is, I will continue to eat. Versus a shashako, let's see, on water. And then you're going to have a cup of tea, coffee, whatever it may be, or put a lozenge in your mouth, whatever it is. That shaka will cover everything continuously throughout the day, because that's the mindset. That's the way we normally conduct ourselves. Okay? Now, but there's a difference. What's the halacha? It's brought side mafurish, explicit. You say a bird creates on an apple, and before you have a chance to bite an apple, you drop the apple, and it falls away. And now you take another apple. Although you had in mind that after you eat that apple, it's possible you eat other apples. The halacha is you have to say another bracha on the second apple. Because that bracha never took effect. The bracha never took effect, and because it never took effect, that's why the second apple requires a bracha.
They swallowed that first bite.
No, you didn't bite in it. Before you had a chance, somebody knocked the apple out of your hand, and it lost the apple.
Is that a bracha levatala then? First bracha. You said the
You're
bracha, you didn't eat the apple.
It turns out it's a bracha levatola.
Bracha levatala.
But you say, but if he would have eaten the apple and he would want to continue eating other fruits, he's permitted to eat other fruits. But if it did not take effect, the halacha is he's required to say bracha on the other. Okay, so here we're saying he had in mind to say the bracha should affect the first talis. Checks the strings, he realizes they're puzzle. That means the bracha never took effect. See, Mishna Berura says if he had in mind only to put on that one, no other talis, then he has to say bracha on the second talis. But if he had in mind initially to wear another talis, the bracha affects the second talis. He's not required to say on the second talis. What's different than the fruit, right? It should be the same as the fruit, but yet evidently there's a difference between the fruit situation and this. How do we understand it? I'll give you another scenario which comes up. A person gets an aliyah, and the balkore had the safe door open, and it wasn't at the right location. And the person says the bracha. The balkore starts to lane, and he realizes all the columns that are open are none of them are the correct columns. All three. As many are open in front of him, not the correct columns. And he has to roll it. The halacha is he has to say another bracha. He has to say another bracha on the Torah. If it was exposed, so his mind was, even though, let's say he showed him the first column, but the second and third were exposed, his mind was whatever's in front of him. But if it was not, right, then since he has to roll to another location, it's not valid. It's similar to the apple situation. Initially, I had in my mind the bracha should go on this, and it continues on others, right? Even though he had in mind it's 3 plus 4 and 5 and 6, as many columns are necessary. Yet the halacha is it's like the apple. So how do you differentiate between what the Mishna Berura is saying here regarding the talus? If you have put on the first, you find that to be puzzle, since you have to say another bracha on the second because you never had in mind to wear a second. But if you had specifically in mind to wear a second, you're not required. How do you differentiate? So evidently there's a difference. The case of the bracha is I have in mind to continue eating. What, when, where, I don't have. There it's not specifically the bracha is actually covering, it does cover, but it's not considered, I said the bracha on the second morsel, the second fruit, or the third fruit, or the fifth fruit. It's a continuation of the first eating. If you begin eating, you could continue eating. That's called the continuation. When you have just, in general, I will continue. What happens if you never began? You can't talk about a continuation if you never began eating. If I begin laning, I will continue. What about if you have specifically in mind, I want this bracha to cover A, B, C. So B and C is not a continuation of the first. Each one is independent. The bracha I had in mind should cover each wearing independent of the other. So even if I never put on the first, it's irrelevant if I never put on the first. The second and third is not a continuation of the first. When you eat, I say the motzi. You say the motzi, based on that, if you have in mind, you have an open mind, you're permitted to continue eating. And everything is attributed to the beginning of the eating. So if, let's say you never began eating, because the apple or the bread fell out of your hand, and you have to take another piece of bread, you have to say another motzi for that reason. That's how you have to differentiate.
I have a hard time with that because you're still with the tzitzis, you're continuing just like the eating.
No, we're talking. He says if you had specifically in mind, I want the bracha to go on not only garment A, garment B, and garment C. Even if the first one should be found out to be possible, you do not have to say bracha on garment B because you had specifically in mind B. So if I had specifically in mind B, it's not. I don't have to say on B because it's continuation.
So in other words, the garment has to be there in front of you.
No, not even. He has in mind. He knows where it is. It's not if it should present itself. It's not an if it should present itself. If it should present itself, that's a continuation. I'll put on multiple. Whatever garments I find or should present themselves, that would be a continuation.
Whatever apple I find in the future of the day, I'm going to eat it.
You're right. So that's a continuation. Then if you don't eat the first apple, you have to say bracha on the subsequent
But if
apples.
you don't put the first talus
No.
on, you don't have to say bracha on the second one. That was
No, we're saying here he had in mind specifically, when I said the bracha, I will put on garment day. I know which garment I'm putting on.
right.
We're speaking, you know which garment you're going to put on.
Right.
You said a bracha, you talus cotton, and you had in mind, I'm going to put on my talus gadol immediately afterwards. So I want the bracha to cover A and B.
Okay.
Even if talus cotton turns out to be possible, you do not have to say bracha on the talus gadol. Because talus gadol is not a continuation of A. I had in mind specifically, the bracha should cover A and B. So B is as independent as A. David, you hear the difference? Okay, you think about it.
In the situation of the fruit, where you have an apple, but your mind is that whatever fruits underneath during that meal are covered by the lower ingredients. But the pear and the grapes and the banana, whatever, not banana, not apes, but the pear or the grapes, they're not in front of you. They're in the refrigerator. 15, 20 minutes later, even though you didn't bench or finish the meal, you decided to go get some grapes.
Doesn't make a difference. Doesn't have to be. Still, you cover it, open-minded.
As long as you have them.
I'll give you an example. The halacha is, this.
You don't have to verbalize that.
No. You don't even have to think it. It's based on your normal behavior, your normal behavior pattern. Hatova meitiv. If you have different quality wines, we'll have it later in Birchas Hanenim. You're supposed to say Tova meitiv. What about it was on the wine was on the premises, even though you didn't think about it? Do you say Tova meitiv? You had a much better quality. You had a guest coming. You say, "Oh, we're going to bring out," and you weren't counting on the guest. We're going to take out the special bottle of wine in honor of the guest. You don't say Tova meitiv. The way we rule. Why? Because a person's mindset is anything that's on the premises, one doesn't have to say Tova meitiv. At a certain level, it's in your mindset. You never know, you may be drinking that wine. But let's say a guest would bring a special bottle of wine that you never counted on. Never counted on. So it wasn't on your premises, you never counted on it coming. If you knew it was coming, even though you didn't think specifically, when you said the word Priyagofen, that wine, one doesn't say Tov HaMeitiv. But factually, you were counting on it, or was on the premises, one does not say Tov HaMeitiv.
Let's suppose that a person wants to do a Tov HaMeitiv. So he has 2 bottles of wine.
Cannot say it. Does not say it. Does not say it. The way we rule halacha, I mean, there's certain opinions you do, but the way we rule, you do not say it.
You don't say it.
Don't say it.
Even though I have in
As
mind-
long as you're aware that it's available to you, that's sufficient reason not to be able to say it.
It's a complete surprise. That's the only time you do it.
Correct. Correct.
It's a complete surprise.
Correct. Or even yourself, in the middle of the meal, you went and you called up, ordered a bottle of wine.
But if it's on your premises, no good.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
Wow.
And your wine cellar, you did not say a tov. Very rarely do you say a tov HaMeitiv. So let's say you go to a hotel. You paid, you're at the Seder, and based on what you pay, they'll bring you any vintage that you want. And you say, by the way, then they says, I didn't think you carried that vintage. It's irrelevant. I mean, whatever is in the hotel's wine cellar, whatever it is, you have a right, as a guest, you have a right to ask for that. You would not say a tov HaMeitiv.
Why? Why wouldn't you? If it's a better...
Because it's based upon, was it in your possession before? Even though consciously you did not think about it, does make a difference.
So, Rabbi, can I ask about a bracha achrona in the case of this extended eating process? So let's suppose, and this happens to me in my office, happens literally every day. So I want to have my mizunot in the morning, but I'm not planning to have any more mizunot during the rest of the day, but I'm planning to eat. So I make my mizunot, I make a borei priya adama, I make a shehakol, all together when I'm eating in the morning. Now, I'm going to continue the shehakol and maybe the borei priya adama throughout the day. When do I make my bracha on the borei nefashot?
When you finish it. Well, let's talk. What do you leave the office during the day?
No, let's suppose I'm not.
If you feel you're going to have a lapse of time, right, then you should say the bracha during the parshas.
Because there will be a lapse. I mean,
No, a lapse of 70, but you'll be drinking something in between.
Yes.
Then you don't say during the parshas throughout the day. You will not say it.
Should I say
Alamichi, of course. Alamichi you should say.
So could I say the alamichia and have in mind, I'm only saying the bracha achrona for alamichia, but I'm going to continue shehakol and all the other things.
You don't even have to have that in mind. Alamichia only terminates the mazonos. All the others
so
continue.
That would be the preferable way. If I know I'm not going to have...
That is the only way. Because if
as
you know...
opposed to waiting till the end of
No,
the day.
you're not going to be able to say the alamichia.
Right, 'cause
You wait too long. It's too long. There's too much of a lapse. Right. That's correct. And
something happens, you're interrupted. Is that the equivalent case here?
it's brought by, what's his name, similar, by B'dikas Chametz. It says, L'chatchila you should not speak. Till you finish. Of course, it's one, you continue, but if you do speak, you don't have to say another bracha. Of course, it's like beginning a meal. Right. Okay, let's see the Mesilas Yesharim.
We're going to digress just for mincha, you have to say a bracha when you put that talis on the chazan.
Definitely not.
Definitely
100%.
not.
No.
Is there, the Mishna Berura says that
Yeah.
it's not?
No, you can. Well, if it's a borrowed talis, definitely not.
It's a shul talis. I'll tell you a scenario.
But then there's have to check the tzitzis to make sure it's kosher.
The chazan yesterday said the bracha on the talis.
It's fine, you
Put
can.
it on, and then it turns out there was someone who had a yurt site, that the guy with the yurt site took over, so he had to take his talis off, never went down with it, and...
Doesn't make a difference. You put it on. If it was tal shel tzibur, it's not a bracha levatolo because everybody's part of the tzibur.
But you don't have to say a bracha on that talis, correct?
The minig is not to say talis, a bracha. The minig is not to. No.
So it's a couple.
Because it's like taking a talis for the aliyah.
Right.
One doesn't say. What if this person said the bracha when he took a talis for the aliyah? You don't wear talis in a regular shul for mincha.
No.
Right, but let's say he would. Let's say somebody would go up for shachris,
Right.
and he doesn't have his talis. Would he say bracha on the talis when he get the aliyah? Right, in the morning people do usually wear a talis in the morning.
Probably yes.
This person, seemingly he would, because there's no difference going to the Aliyah or going to the Yom. It's the same reason. Probably he probably would have not, because the man doesn't understand. He's displaying what kind of Talmud Chacham he is. Okay.